everybody in? Everybody in? Everybody in? Ceremony's about to begin.
It's one more last time for me to say. All right, here we are on One More Last Time, the podcast. I think we're on episode 5. Sooner or later, I'm going to have to stop keeping track of how many, but
we'll just have to put the date.
yeah, I'm like, I don't know.
We'll just forget it. I already titled my track wrong on my Studio One. I put number 4.
Well, no, we're at
Yeah.
5. But yeah, I'm one of your hosts, Jared Tabor, and
Tommy Perkins.
heyo. So we've been doing this for a little while now. I think we've been trying to do every 2 weeks or so, give or take. And then the last episode we had old JT Brown, who was in a band called Unified Front, and then he's been doing the lead stuff on our just newer stuff, and the remake of the Waiting on Love. But this one probably be short because we just have a few things we wanted to talk about. And then I think, man, pretty soon we should do the whole episode of your life story if you're up for it.
Man, yeah, I'm still trying to figure out how to condense that and make it, I guess, appropriate.
Yeah.
Or something.
I feel you. I mean, we can wait a couple more episodes, but
Yeah,
be thinking
we'll
about
get
it.
figured out.
Yeah.
All right.
So a couple of things so Tommy and I, when we get ideas to talk about, we're always texting or whatever. And one of them was how you text me about churches not paying some of your musicians. And I was like, yeah, we should talk about that. And then
Definitely.
then that led me into thinking about performance worship bands, specifically one that opened for us many years ago. And so,
Oh, gosh.
and then wanted to talk a little about, Summer Fade, the original EP, Summer Fade, the 5 songs. Talk about the song meanings. We already talked about Not Beautiful, but we'll do a recap of it. Just a brief overview of what those songs are about. And then I'm going to throw a fastball at you. You can be thinking about it. Is your top 5 musical influences?
Okay.
Just
overall?
Yeah, overall. It doesn't have to be like,
Okay.
Just whatever. Because mine have switched. Mine changed. I mean, I'll talk about it later because I grew up a huge Early Peace fan, but I think the later Early Peace stuff is not very good. And so I switched.
Yeah.
But so we could talk about that at the end. But the whole church is not paying their musicians or some of their bands. Not all churches pay, period, other than like the worship pastor or leader, because that ends up being his job. And so rarely do you see a church paying its other members. But when churches are paying more than just the worship leader or worship pastor,
Yes.
and they're paying 1 or 2 individuals, but not the rest of the people, that's where things get a little tricky and a little...
Not that I've been involved in that at any churches I've been in
Yeah.
or anything. Okay, I have.
Yeah, I was going to say.
That's where that.
Yeah, that's where it came from.
So yeah, when I texted you that original thing, that's kind of what I was going at was, like your kind of smaller churches and a lot of mid-sized churches, it's pretty normal to not pay your band and everything. But when I'm talking about like the churches that pay everybody except the band, or some members of the band, and things like that. It's that's kind of where I was coming from, that standpoint of it.
Yeah, I know like some of the mega churches, especially, we live here in Oklahoma, so people can kind of figure out what we're talking about. That specific mega church pays, I don't know what it is now. I'm assuming it's more because of this was 15 years ago when I knew about it, was, excuse me, I think they were paying each band member like $1,500 a month, like just to play like as a band member, like and I don't know what the worship leaders are making at those churches. And I think it depends on your campus's budget or whatever, for you can kind of pay some of your guys probably get a little, you pay them a little more if they're better than, I don't know. But I know that some people that I used to play music with, they were getting paid to play there, and so that's how I know about that.
Yeah.
But didn't you get recruited or something? You got
I
an
did.
email? Or...
Yeah, I had them reach out to me, and I think it was like something like 75 a service or something. But that's on a not like a permanent basis. It's
Yeah.
just like they need me here, I'd play there. If they need me,
Yeah.
another one. I didn't do it though because I didn't want to do it just for the money, But yeah, so I didn't even know that was a thing, a worship recruiter.
Yeah, I didn't either. When you told me that, I was like, "What?"
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it kind of makes sense, I guess, if you're a large church like they are.
Yeah.
I guess it kind of makes sense for that. But,
Which is weird that I feel like that's the worship leader's job. I mean, it's kind of like
it could be.
that's
Yeah,
part
I mean,
of that's part of my job. I have to find people within
Yeah.
the church that can play. It's like
exactly. Yeah.
just have a guy on staff that just recruits for you. Like what? I'm like, what do they do? What do worship leaders at these mega churches actually do? I don't know. Because I feel like they've got their own music director. They've got probably a guy that's doing all the tracks and getting all that set up. I know that a lot of times at that specific church, the lead guitar players don't play live. They fake it because they've got the one guy on track that tracks it during the week, which I don't even get me started.
Yeah. We can't even get started on that, really, especially you, since that's what you do now.
I was like, ugh.
But yeah, we just can't get started.
No,
there.
But yeah, I remember like thinking, I was like, man, even back when it was like $1,500, that's like a part-time job. I was like, I don't know, that's a little weird.
That's some people's full-time job.
Yeah.
I mean, for real,
And so
that's a lot.
I was getting I started getting paid when I first started. So when Radial Angel was done and I had done the New York Summer stuff, and it was kind of, I didn't know what I was going to do with my life anymore. I was still just kind of hanging on to trying to do the New York Summer stuff. And the bass player that we had at the time, his name was Justin, and he had been playing like acoustic guitar at a church in Midwest City, and he couldn't make it on one of the Sundays, and he asked if I would fill in, and he was like, it's like $75 for the service. I was like, I could use some pocket money, I guess. And I was like, sure, I'll do it. And that's kind of actually where I really felt like God was like, hey, this is where I wanted you for a little bit. And so granted, I took it for the $75. But then I ended up I just emailed, the worship leader of the whole, cause they called it a specific name, and then it was for like the young adults. It was more like rock oriented worship. It was, and the video was the pastor was on video, but it was like on the same campus. It was like in their like youth room or whatever. And it was a lot of younger adults and stuff. It was fun. But I ended up just reaching out and just say, hey, if you need anybody else, just let me know. I'm here. I live here. So, I don't play anywhere on Sundays. And usually at that point in my life, I actually wasn't even going to church anymore for a little while. And so I was just like, yeah, if you need anything, let me know and I can fill in or whatever. And that kind of went from just playing acoustic to like electric to then like leading songs. So it kind of progressed, but I was getting paid like $100 a service, and it wasn't like I didn't ask for it. They were just like, we're gonna pay you $100. I was like, I'm not gonna say no.
Okay,
I'm not gonna turn money down, but
it's especially not when you're in that situation, like we're talking about how you don't get it a lot,
mm-hmm.
So sure, yeah.
And I mean, that was when the band was over. I was working a full-time job at a rug store, and it was wild. What was weird though is like
such a random job.
I know it was. It was wild. If
I'm a rug guy.
Yeah, I worked at a rug store, and that was it. I would deliver rugs, and I got paid stupid amount of money to deliver rugs. Wow. So this was what year was that? God, that had to be 2008, 2009. Something around in there. I was $15 an hour. Like that's pretty good back then.
Well, yeah.
And I was
especially back then.
Yeah, and then when I got back to Oklahoma a couple years ago, I worked at Ideal Homes, and I was making about $15 an hour, and I was like, this is crappy. Like I should, but had to do what I had to get to do.
Considering the balances of the two jobs.
Yeah, especially
delivering rugs
and then doing what I had to do at Ideal Homes was a lot more work. But I was like, $15 an hour, but it was good because I was just living with my dad at the time, and so I was like, didn't really have any responsibilities.
Yeah.
But just going to that church and starting to play is what kind of progressed into what I'm doing now. And that kind of started because a good friend of ours, you remember Joe Ferreira?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
He had just been like, you ever thought about being a full-time worship leader? And I was like, not really. And I kind of just, him asking me that kind of, I was like processing it.
Made you think about it.
Yeah. And so then I actually reached out to Tony Brown, who was a concert promoter at the time down in Texas. We had done one of those shows we had talked about a couple episodes ago, the Benjamin Gate, Altogether Separate. The place called the Underground. He was the promoter for that venue. And so
Such a cool place.
Yeah, I loved that place.
Yeah.
But I had kept in touch with him because the very, very last Radial Angel show ever was at a venue that he was got the promoter for there too. But it was also, it doubled as a church on Sunday, so it was called Theater 166. And cool place, man. Very arts driven, like very creative. It was like a church that was like creatives. Like the pastor was super awesome. So I ended up reaching out to Tony Brown and just said, hey, do you know any churches that are looking for a worship leader? And just kind of started from there. And so he had introduced me to his pastor at the time, David, and it was at that Theater 166. So I just kind of started. I commuted down to like Carrollton, Texas. I would leave basically when I got off work on Fridays, or wait until Saturday morning and head down, and I would stay with random, people from the church or whatever, or sometimes at David's. And it was kind of the first glimpse I've got of like actual discipleship from a pastor. We met every Saturday, he and I, and had a good meal. I wasn't really into wine at the time. I wish I would have been because they were like wine gurus.
I don't like it.
I like sweet wines now, like ones that taste more like grape juice.
Oh yeah.
But at the time I wasn't really drinking. I would smoke a cigar here and there with them and stuff, but it was really cool. It was very in-depth, just spiritual conversations, and just it was a really cool time. But I was just basically an interim. I know that they really wanted me, but they could only offer part-time, and I was like, I can't move to Carrollton, Texas for a part-time gig. And so I just kind of put my resume out and then ended up getting that church in Virginia. But it was all because I decided to say yes to Justin's question of, can you fill in for me on a Sunday morning? It's weird how God just kind of takes that away. But all the churches that I've been a part of, with the exception of Virginia. So the church in Virginia, I inherited the situation, and we were paying one guy on the team, and he was the guitar player. But it wasn't very much, and it was like, basically, I think they had worked it out because they were just trying to help him out financially. But he was the only one that was really getting paid for anything. But past that, I was like, it was all volunteer based. So I was like, when you hear about these mega churches that are paying God amounts of money, you got to wonder, are they Christian or are they just good musicians and you're getting paid to play? Yeah, because you're a good guitar player or a drummer or bass player or whatever.
Well, that's the other side of it too. Is a lot of people think at these big churches, we're just giving away everybody's secrets today.
Hey, it's fine. That's what we do.
Hey, at these big churches, they think, oh, that drummer's a Christian and that bass player's, that may be the case, but they also just hire guys to play. I mean, at the end of the day, you need for those kind of churches, you need a solid performance. You need guys that you can just call and even with very short notice and know they're going to play awesome.
Yep, play to a click. Tracks.
Play to a click. Yeah.
Preferably could probably, if it's last minute, could just on the drive there listen to the 3 or 4 songs and go, yep, got it, and then show up.
And done that before.
Yeah. I hear there's a podcast I listen to. It's called the Undaunted Life, a man's podcast. It's a guy Kyle Thompson. He's actually out of Edmond. He talks about it all the time. He's surrounded by that mega church, and he's like, most of those guys aren't Christian. Like they're just phenomenal musicians that are getting paid to play. And so that, for me as a worship pastor who has gone from a band of performance going back down to what I'm doing now, it really bothers me to hear about that, because ultimately, like, it changes the anointing of what's going on a Sunday. If you have somebody that's on stage on a platform that's not a believer, and you're trying to do things that believers do,
Yeah.
it's like that can hinder some things here. And so
I could see that for sure. Yeah.
so I don't know, it kind of bothers me, but I'm like, not my church. So
Yeah.
and those churches are good for people to be at them for like a year and a half, and then they're like, yeah, I need some meat. Like I need to go to another church. And so I call those mega churches, the church that I'm at is like Justin, my pastor, he is a line by line, chapter by chapter. I'm blanking on the term right now.
By the book.
Yeah, well, it's like there's a term for going literally
okay.
preaching line by line, chapter by chapter.
Okay.
Man, I am blanking on the word, and I'll think about it later. I don't have to say it, and there's meat, so like you're getting good Bible teaching, and then you go to a church like those mega churches, and it's like this motivational speech, make you feel good. I want to.
Yeah, man.
But by the time you get to the parking lot, it's kind of worn off already, and you're like, I'm hungry. I didn't eat. I got some Skittles. That's what I ate, and instead of a steak.
Speaking of, Pastor Justin, I go to your church, as often as I can, when I can come out there, and I learn something almost every time I go there, pretty much, because he's just he teaches out of the Bible, and he also tells you things that you wouldn't know from the Bible, but you have to dig deeper. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You just don't get that everywhere.
It's very rare these days. I have to look it up because I'm dying on that word.
It's gonna bother you till you do.
Expository. That's what I was like. God, I couldn't think of it. Yeah, expository preaching. It's literally line by line, chapter by chapter. So when I first started there, October-ish, like November, October-ish of 2021, he was in Revelation, so it was pretty intense. It's just line by line, verse by verse, chapter by chapter, and I was like, man, it's wild. And then I remember, I think we went into Romans, and just the greeting that he read from the beginning of the chapter of Romans, I was like, I've never, I've never even, I'm like, I'm getting so much meat out of the greeting that Paul is saying here in Romans. So it's just really funny to me. So I call it, having a steak versus having some Skittles candy. Eventually you get hungry and you want to go somewhere.
Get tired
else.
of candy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those churches have their place. They get people in that normally wouldn't ever come to church or whatever. But at some point, there's no depth, and so what are you really doing there? I could talk for hours on this subject, so I'm going to roll. I'm going to move on. But yeah, I remember starting to figure out, like, man, these churches have too much money if they're paying their musicians that much or whatever. But like you said, you got to have those guys because it's a tight ship. It's 3 songs and a sermon, and it's more of
a production in
it really is.
Kind of situation.
Yeah. You can hear, like, if you Google or if you pay attention on social media and you see some of those guys will like record themselves playing, especially drummers, and it's like a shot, but you're hearing their intermix. You hear a director, like, all right, we're at 10 seconds. The video, you got to get rolling or whatever, and then it's like, all right, band, get ready, 5 seconds, and then you're like, what? It's because everything's timed. And I was like, well, how are you letting the Spirit flow in that 15 to 18 minute block?
That's the other thing. And then I've played at a big church here, which is a different one than the one we're talking about, and where they had a full-time worship leader, but they had also an MD, musical director, and sometimes it would be me, sometimes it would be 1 or 2 other guys. But I remember thinking, don't these other guys are getting paid to do this? So why, and I guess the ultimate goal is to take pressure off the worship leader, maybe, so that they don't have to worry about, okay, we're 4 measures into the second verse. Maybe that's it. But yeah, anyway.
Yeah, it's weird because, like, you've been to my church a couple times. I just use I use Loop Community, and so the tracks in there, it's got its own cues, and I can
Yeah, it
I
makes it
can
super easy.
yeah. So I'm like, I don't need a music director because that thing's doing
Mm-mm.
it for me, and
Yep.
I don't have to pay that much for it. Um,
Yep.
but it's also so people will be like, well, you played a track, so it's very limited. But the thing is with that MIDI controller that I have, it's like, oh, I want to repeat that chorus, so I'll hit that
Yep.
the button repeat. It waits to the end of that section, and it gives you the 4 count going back into the chorus. So
Yep.
there's so much flexibility in that. And then I always run a pad in between each stuff, so there's no
Hmm.
dead space. It also gives me opportunity to read scripture or whatever, or pray or kind of intro the song or whatever. So I do plan certain things, but there's a lot of times on the fly where it's like I'm like, okay, maybe I should talk about something right here, or God's putting something on my heart, so there's flexibility there. But when you have a 18-minute window and because you got to have a video feed up, like there's no room for anything really.
No flexibility, no spirit moving, no
Yeah.
nothing.
So that's kind of wild. So that kind of leads us into performance worship bands. And so many a year ago, we played a show in our
It was a
hometown.
long time ago.
Yeah, in our hometown of Noble, Oklahoma, where we started at the First Baptist Church there. I don't even remember that worship band. Like,
I don't remember. It was
yeah,
like a guy. It was
yeah,
just
it was
like
his name,
yeah, his name.
and
Yeah.
then but he was a worship leader, so it was all worship stuff. It was the wildest thing. Like next thing we know, that dude's left the stage, singing "Open the Eyes of My Heart" and holding a girl's hand, like singing it to her.
Like it's a love song.
Yeah, I was like,
like
what is happening
Yeah.
right now?
like he's Nick Carter or something.
Yeah,
It's like what's going on?
and that was like even before I had even like leading worship wasn't even on my radar or any of our
No.
radars. Like we had
No.
started the band, and even I knew I was like, I don't think that's okay. Like
No.
this is weird.
Yeah, it was real weird. Yeah.
It's weird. So it kind of it kind of gets me like thinking about. You ever thought how weird it is? You kind of said it. You said it maybe the first episode or second episode where Christianity is the only one that commercializes our religion.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I remember Eddie having a real big issue with that too. And then as I'm getting older, and I'm like, I kind of have an issue with that. We're like
Yeah.
selling our faith.
yeah.
And so I was like,
yeah.
I forget, somebody was like, "You gonna go to there was a worship band,
Yeah.
at the Paycom Center the last couple days,
Mm-hmm.
and tickets were not cheap." And I was like, "Hold on a second, why am I paying money to
For
go
worship.
watch you worship?" Like,
Yeah.
I don't understand that at all. But
Yeah.
it would be different if it's just, hey, we're gonna put on a show,
Yeah.
pay to come see us.
Yeah.
But why am I paying us, $50 a ticket, even $25 a ticket to,
Yeah.
to join in for you to have church, if that's what you're trying to say?
It's one of those things like at first glance, people probably don't think much about it. You know, they
Mm-mm.
think,
Mm-mm.
oh, they're a band, they tour or whatever. And, we'd be the first ones to tell you that a touring band should get paid,
Yes.
since we've been down that road. But, when you're like, the more you just think about it, you're like, you're paying for a worship service,
Mm-hmm.
and it's almost like you're paying to worship God. I don't know.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's weird. Yeah.
It's a weird thing because honestly, I'll be honest with you. Courtney and I are going to go see Kim Walker Smith and John
I
Bevere.
knew you were. I'm just kidding.
John,
I barely know who that is.
Yeah, and John Bevere, who is a pastor of a church, but they're doing these like worship nights where he wrote a book, and it's, I want to go see him. If I could go to his church, I would, but I just found out he was going to be in Tulsa. I was like, I gotta go because I saw one of his videos. I don't follow him or anything on social media. I don't follow hardly any like worship leaders or anything like that either on social media. But I guess somebody, whatever the algorithm, let me see this specific video of John Bevere, one of his, like a snippet of a sermon, twice. And I was like, okay, God, what are you? And so I ended up watching the sermon because I was like, I'm really intrigued by it. God really has me in this understanding the fear of God and what that means, and the reverence and just the awe of his glory, and how we're supposed to come we can no longer come nonchalantly before him, because as you study the old, only the high priest could be into the holy holies. they had to tie a rope around their feet and wear a bell in case they were struck dead and it could be pulled out. And I was like, if you think, I was like, that's serious. Like, God took serious to be in his presence. And here we are coming to church on a Sunday. And what do you got for me today, God? Here's all my junk. And instead of like, this is the holy living God. So I've been on that kick, and I saw a video and he was talking about that. I was like, oh man. And so he wrote a book about it. And so you pay the ticket, but you also get the book. So I was like, well, I'm kind of paying for the book because the tickets aren't very, very expensive at all. And so I was like, oh, okay, I'll go to that. But for the most part, I'm not going to pay like to go see a church band. And that, I mean, that's essentially what that band was that was at Paycom recently. Then I watched, what was that Hillsong? This was before all the stuff came out about them. When they were recording that, the record with, they like booked the studio out in LA. They're like writing this record, and it kind of shows behind the scenes of them writing this record and kind of the musicians. And then half that worship team lives with their parents. And I was like, hold on a second. You guys are one of the biggest churches in the world. You're writing these huge songs that every church in the world is using. So I know you're making money on the back end for royalties and stuff, because I know how much my church has to pay for licensing to use those said songs on a Sunday. So I was like, where's all this money going? And so then it was like, maybe that's why they tour, because they need to feed themselves. But I was like, who's making the money off these songs and being in this band? So it's weird, man. But I'm uncomfortable most of the time paying money to go see a worship band put on a show. I was like, I'll go see a band because we're going to go down to Dallas and see Bush and Our Lady Peace next month. Yeah. Which might suck because I've seen snippets of both those bands live now, and I'm like, man, you're old. And I can hear it in your voices. But I'm like, so I don't know. It's just performance worship. It's weird, man. Like, I know immediately if I'm watching something, like a live service or something, I'm like, yeah, they're performing. Or, hey, they're really worshiping at this point. So it's just weird. Like, it would be weird to put on a pseudo show / worship event like every night, and that's your tour. I don't know. It's almost like you're, kind of faking some stuff here and there. But I don't know their hearts, but I'm just saying how I feel.
Yeah, that's the hard part to judge, but you even said, like if it's a show and it's, every night, there are nights where, like, I know I didn't feel in it on tour. Mm-hmm. You didn't feel it. It's just a thing that touring musicians go through. So that would be even harder.
Because then you're truly faking it at that point.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because I remember a lot of those shows where like people were like,
oh man,
how was it? I was like, I felt like work. Like, and that was the thing.
Yeah.
Like when you doing something that you truly love, which is, we loved it. We love playing music and playing live. And when you step off the stage, you're like, man, that felt like work. That means it sucked. It was not good. Like you weren't feeling it. No. And so I can't imagine being in a worship situation like that and trying to do that every night and you're going to have to go out there and go, well, I don't really feel like doing this, but here we go.
And especially on the flip side of that, if you're, do you call them fans? If it's I don't know.
That's what I'm saying. It's weird.
I mean, like
this
when your fans are
area.
paying, $50, $60 a ticket to see you every night, they deserve, if it's truly a worship experience, they deserve a true worship experience, especially if they've paid for it. Anyway, we could both go on about that forever, and
I mean, that's the thing. Like I've went and seen some of this stuff. So when Courtney and I were living in Orlando, we went one of the Bethel worship nights, because I was doing a lot of their songs at the time, and it was good. Like I worshipped, and because they're so good at what they do, I wasn't distracted, and so because I have a hard time as a worship leader, and even before I was a worship leader, like I'm just a musician, so I want to watch the band, I want to see what they're doing, I want to do all that, I'm distracted.
It's natural,
and so those are some of the only times that I could just zone out and really be and have my moment with the Lord. I'm getting better at that by not being distracted by subpar musicians, but
yeah.
So I've done it before. but as I've gotten older and really gotten more into ministry, I'm like, it's just weird, like that I'm paying to worship God.
Yeah,
And then it's like, I don't know, it's weird. So I understand like Eddie's struggle with it back then. It was like, we're essentially trying to sell our faith and sell Jesus, is what he was trying to say. And I was like, yeah, it's weird. It's weird.
I didn't like agree with it back then necessarily, just because I didn't think about it.
Yeah.
Really, you know, but I do now, you know, and anyway.
Yeah, it's weird. Like it's I guess
I
it's
totally get it.
yeah. So now I'm like, well, I don't want to sell any records. But I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Buy our records.
Yeah.
That's how we eat. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Well, we're not a worship band.
No,
so
we're not.
That's all right. Yeah, by any means. Yeah.
And even like that was the whole thing. Remember, you get this boxed into, well, they're Christians, so they're a Christian band. I'm like, we believers. We're just making music.
And then that's the other thing. We keep getting sidetracked, but I keep
fine.
thinking of all these things. You know, like you had mentioned, I believe, also in the first podcast or maybe the second one, about how, you know, like we're one of the only religions, and it's kind of what I was saying also, that if you're a Christian and you're a musician, they automatically expect you to be a Christian museum.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, musician, excuse me, museum.
I don't know, $5 to go see this museum.
Yes. So anyway, Norman has good museums, and no, it's just, you know, and it's like, you know, well, why can't I just be a Christian and a musician?
Yeah.
But not a Christian musician.
Yeah.
You know,
think,
and people will look down on you for that.
I think it was it John Foreman from Switchfoot said it best. I think he was like, you know, if you're a painter, like an artist, like you paint paintings, and you're a believer, you don't just paint the cross.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's just not the only thing you paint. Like you're painting, it's an expression of creativity. And for me, and even back then, I even thought, was like, you know, if we're Christians and we serve the Creator, shouldn't we be some of the most creative people out there? And I was like, that's why I always struggled with like bands that were just cheese and like subpar stuff. And I struggled with churches that were okay with like having subpar. And I get it, sometimes that's all you have.
Sometimes, yeah.
But there's other ways around, like, hey, why don't you just have a singer and maybe one guitar, you know, like.
Yeah.
But so I was like, yeah, we should be the most creative, but that doesn't mean we should limit ourselves to our creativity. And so for me, I mean, I just wrote struggles. Whatever I was going through or things I was processing, or, I mean, when we were really at that time, I was like 20. I'm like, I'm still processing who I am as a person. I'm trying to figure all this out, and here we are. We have a record deal with like pressures on us that, you know, I feel bad for these like YouTube stars now, like, or TikTok people that get blown up and they're young and they are, you know, thrusted into the limelight. I'm like, I can't imagine that, because we weren't even on that scale, and I still struggled to try to figure out. I'm in my 20s, like, who am I? Like, what are we doing?
And I was I was 18.
Yeah, you were a
when
kid.
We signed. Yeah, I was a kid, and I mean, we all were, I guess, to an extent. You know,
yeah.
But it's just, you know, and then they have this enormous pressure on them because they've got sponsors, they've got, you know, all that. You know, they got views. You know, they got so many
keep
views.
up your views.
Yeah, or you'll be down.
Yep.
You know.
Or they'll move on to the next 15-minute thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's tough. I couldn't imagine. But I'm like, just as a believer, I'm like, we should be the most creative. We should be putting out the best music. You know, so what I did today, I listened to Audio Adrenaline. It's called, it's like their greatest hits. I think it's called From, what is it called? I pull it up because it was really good. Because it was basically just the singles that they had released. When they were really Audio Adrenaline.
Before Mark left.
Yeah.
Which made them not Audio Adrenaline.
By the way, the picture that comes up when you pull it up on Spotify, I'm like, I don't know any of those dudes. There's 4 random guys, and they're calling themselves Audio Adrenaline. So wow. Don't get me started on that.
Yeah, we can't even get.
It's called Big House to Ocean Floor. and it's like
Oh.
the single. So it's like Big House, Get Down, Hands and Feet, We're a Band, Underdog, Never Gonna Be as Big as Jesus, Leaving 99, King, Clap Your Hands, Mighty Good Leader, Pierce, Chevette, which is a great song.
Oh,
Some
yeah.
Kind of Zombie, awesome song.
That's
Beautiful.
great.
Man of God and Ocean Floor. And I was like, I was listening to these songs, thinking about the time frame they come out. I was like, this was a great band. And the
Yeah.
production value on these records were great. And so I was like, oh, I remember Jars of Clay. I think one of my favorite Jars of Clay records, I was listening to that today too, was Good Monsters. That's the one with
Oh, that's
Work.
a good one.
Man, I was like, it was like, that's a phenomenal band.
Yeah.
Like, DC Talks Jesus Freak album, phenomenal record. Like, that should have been the standard of, this is going to be Christian music. You have to be this good. Instead,
Yeah.
you get mediocre crap and call it Christian. I'm like, no wonder nobody wants to be a, a believer.
Yeah.
You got junky, cheesy
Yeah,
music.
Cheese fest.
Oh, it was bad.
Yeah.
I could tell people were getting sucked into the, well, I got to have the Jesus per minute thing. So I got to say Jesus all the time. I mean, we were guilty of that, especially that first record. Because
Well,
we just,
Oh,
we didn't
the
know any
first
better.
one,
We just
yeah.
felt like we had to say Jesus all the time or whatever, or no
Yeah.
one was going to take us serious. I
Yeah.
was like, but then you grow up and you're like, yeah, I'm just an artist. God gave me this
There-
creativity. I'm going to make good music.
There was a shift after the self-titled record
Yes.
for us that went more of that way.
Yeah. Anyways, again, could go for another 2 hours on this, but I digress.
Yes.
Let's go on to let's save the Summer Fade song meanings to the end. Let's do top 5 musical influences. Do you want to go? 'Cause
Sure.
I
Yeah.
gotta think about mine.
I'll have to think about it / bull my way through mine.
Hey, that's fine. That's probably what I'm have to do.
So when I think of musical influences, I'm not necessarily thinking about drums. I'm not necessarily thinking about I'm just thinking like what made me a musical influence should make you say I want to do that.
Yeah.
And so when I think of musical influences, I think of the first artist that I listened to that really impacted me was growing up was Keith Whitley, which is a country artist.
Mhm.
Country's my favorite. For
Mhm.
those of you that don't know, yes,
He's
I'm
a good
drummer
old
in a
boy.
rock band, but I'm a good old boy. And
Good old
country,
boy.
see, even my chair's camo. Well, you can't see it. I get confused because anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway,
It's backwards.
yeah, it's backwards. Yeah. So Keith Whitley. I remember my dad and I would listen. We had this big old stereo. Remember when those were cool, like those big old stereos, and they had the graphic EQ on them.
Yeah, man. And the
it-
speakers were like
yeah.
as tall as you.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah. So we would just sit and listen to records, actual records or cassettes, and that was one of them. And like just even when I was little, like his music just impacted me,
Yeah.
in some way. So he's probably definitely got to be at number one for me. I don't really know of, man, that's just so hard.
It's tough.
It really is,
Because you start thinking about like the stuff you liked, and stuff you were
Yeah.
listening to that was like in the time frame that we were writing, and like
Yeah.
that influenced you, and
yeah.
so it's hard
I
to kind of narrow down just your top 5 in that regard.
I would have to throw Tonic in there.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like especially like when you and I are writing and stuff. I think about because Emerson has a great writing style. This the way he says stuff. And just in general how that band tracks an album sounds good. Oh man, I don't know. That's 2.
Yeah, you got
2 out
3
of
more.
5. Oh my gosh. I'm looking around to see if there's anything.
I know. I was like looking at
you
my
know,
Spotify playlist, and yeah, it's tough.
it is tough.
So I'll go, and then maybe
I'll be
inspire you.
yeah.
I would have to say the very first. So I grew up around music, so a lot of people don't know. My dad is a drummer, and when I first started playing music, I actually started on drums. Wasn't very good. I didn't get my dad's drum talent. I probably would have if I would have kept it up, I guess. You know, I was
Probably,
just
yeah.
starting. I was trying to start when I was like 11 or 12. Um, and so I grew up around music, but it wasn't until like 15-ish. I mean, I was playing. I mean, I was into grunge stuff, like everybody else
Mhm.
was in my age in the '90s. And but Bush 16 Stone record was probably the first like album that I was like, man, I want to be in a band. I want to be in a real band. Like I want to do
Yeah.
this is awesome. Like I went and saw them on their second record, the Razorblade Suitcase tour, and it was at what's it called now? It's like a movie studio downtown. It's Prairie Surf Studios. Used to
Oh yeah,
be the Myriad, and
Myriad.
then it
Yeah.
was like the Cox Convention Center, and now it's like
Mhm.
a movie studio. So that
Mhm.
what was that Sylvester Stallone show, Tulsa Kings? A lot of the indoor shots was shot in that arena. It's weird because
Yeah,
it's a
that's
soundstage. It's not an arena anymore. It's still set up as an arena, so they can use it if they ever do like a concert scene or whatever. But
mhm.
I went and saw Bush and Veruca Salt open for them.
Oh yeah,
Dude,
old
blew
school.
blew my. I was like, this is the. I want to be in a rock, but like a real rock band. I want to do this, and it was awesome. So that one, Bush 16 Stone for sure. Um, I'd have to throw in Van Halen. I know this is weird, but because my dad is like, I remember growing up. And when I would stay with him, my parents got divorced when I was pretty young. When I would stay with my dad, he had to get up early and go to work, and so I would be going with him. And so I would get woken up to Van Halen's either Right Now, that piano, dun, 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 right now, hey, now I was like, this is great. Or a song called Pound Cake, which is a the lyrics are terrible.
Sorry.
Yeah, and it's
And that's what it's about.
I'm pretty
sure.
sure. Yeah, I tried to listen to it the other day. I was like, this song's not so good. Why were you letting me listen to this, Dad? But the intro part is he's got like a drill on his guitar, so it's like vroom, vroom, and then it
Oh
starts like
wow,
this really cool.
that's cool.
But so I would say probably Van Halen because I just grew up listening to Van Halen with my dad,
Yeah.
and so anytime I hear both of those songs, I can instantly be brought back to being a kid and
Yeah.
listening. So I was a Van Halen when it was Sammy Hagar. I didn't like David Lee Roth, Van Halen. So I'm a Van Hagar fan. That's what I was.
There's a bunch of like camps of one,
I know,
one
one
of
or
them
the
hates the
other.
other one,
Yeah.
and yeah.
I don't hate the David Lee Roth songs. I'm like, I think the Sammy Hagar stuff's way better.
Yeah.
And it's wild because he can still sing just like that. Sammy Hagar can. David Lee Roth, on the other hand, oof, oof.
No.
He doesn't got it anymore.
No.
So I would say those two, and then probably Tonic, just because again, like, man,
Because.
think of all the hits that they've had. Like,
Oh, I know. Yeah.
You Could Only See, Open Up Your Eyes. What was off the second record? Well, that was just the first one. I still liked
Sugar.
Yeah, Sugar.
Knock down walls.
Mean to Me.
Mean to me.
What was the
One of my favorite lines in that song too. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
What was the You Wanted More? That was
Yeah,
another
that was
hit.
the second record.
Yeah, I'm like, seriously, like, so good.
And it's so sad to me that his solo record, like his first and second one,
Mm-hmm.
are great
Oh, yeah.
records. But I wouldn't have known about him if I wasn't searching for what he was doing now.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? Like they're not on the radio that I know
Mm-mm.
of.
not that I know of.
And it's just sad because it's just great songwriting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he just, I don't know, he just has a way of writing. Like, I love Soldier's Daughter off the first record.
Oh yeah.
Lemon Parade, because that first record's called Lemon Parade, but that song Lemon Parade was really good.
Yeah.
And then I think it's on his solo record, the second one. What is it? I've hung
Second one is-
some homes in our hallway. He's talking about pictures on the wall. Like I've hung some memories in our hallway.
Oh yeah.
That song. So I actually got to go out to Nashville and open up for him. I just did a solo acoustic thing, and he was like working that song out, and so he like sound checked with it, and then he went ahead and played it live, and I was like, that's that's a song that I'm like, when I heard it, I was like, I wish I wrote that song. That's one
Yeah.
of those songs.
We
He
all
has
have a list of that.
Yeah, he has a bunch of his songs. I'm like, I wish I wrote those songs.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, I would just say Tonic or anything that Emerson Hart has done.
Yeah.
I would used to say early EPs, but yeah, I mean, it just kind of changed because once the drummer left, well, once the guitar player left, and then Jeremy left, it's like,
Well, wouldn't they still be on there technically?
I don't know.
Because it formed you to how you write now.
Yeah,
probably.
I guess. Yeah,
You know
I
what
mean,
I'm
because
saying?
that clumsy record is still
Oh yeah.
pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess early EPs would still be on there.
I enjoyed them. Go ahead.
I would stop after Spiritual Machines. To me,
See, I stop after Burn Burn. I loved Burn Burn.
I didn't like it. I
Yeah,
didn't.
see,
When it became like super like I wasn't a huge fan of what's the one that they did with Bob Rock?
the Gravity one.
Yeah, because it has
Wasn't
somewhere
it called
out,
Gravity?
yeah, because it
Yeah,
has
it was
somewhere
called
out there
Gravity.
on there, which was a single, and then
Yeah.
Innocent,
Mhm.
which David Cook did on American Idol, which was cool for them. That was really cool that they got some exposure. Because they're a huge band, but they're not. Like that was weird.
Mhm.
Like they're huge in Canada, that's where they're from, but like here it was like hardly anybody, at least
Yeah.
down here, had heard of them.
Mhm.
But yeah, I would say, I guess Early Peace would still be on there. I am gonna go see them and Bush next month, so I guess we'll see.
Yeah,
I'll come back and let you know how that goes.
yeah.
If they get political, I'm out. I told Courtney that. I was like, man, it's gonna be real tough because I don't want to. I like one of. I think so. Another band I would say. So what am I on? Is that 3 or 4? That's 4.
4.
So I could do 5. Probably Snow Patrol would be the next one.
Yeah.
I started getting into them later, but as of right now, Snow Patrol is probably my favorite band like ever.
Yeah.
I've seen them a couple of times now, and phenomenal show. I got into them on I don't even know, like their first big major label record, which had Run, and then there was a song that was on a movie soundtrack. It doesn't have a chorus. It's just like 3 verses, and the song's over. It's kind of weird.
That is weird.
It's that it starts with a backwards snare, like a reverse, like.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, this could be the very man.
So
it's just
yeah.
those. It's just verse, verse, verse. That's it. There's no hook. And so I was like, I kind of got into them on that record. And then since then, I think it put out Farts on a Snare Drum, and I'd probably buy it and go see them live. But that was gonna say, that led me into the whole don't get political or I'm gonna leave your show. I saw them once at Kane's Ballroom up in Tulsa. They were on the tour of the second major label record, which had Chasing Cars on it, which is the song that blew up for them. But it was a good show because it had Silver Sun Pickups and OK Go and then Snow Patrol. Great show. And then me and Courtney went and saw them in Maine when we were living up in New Hampshire. And this was, so Maine, I don't know, Portland, Maine is like just politically is just like Portland, Oregon. And so, I was expecting him to say something or anything about it, but man, it was awesome. It was just 2 hours of just let us be here to be entertained and like just forget about the outside world and just they're going to play all these great songs and we're just all going to sing together. And it was interesting because he never mentioned anything. There was no political agenda there. There was nothing going on. And good for them because they're from Ireland. I mean, I hate when bands come from other countries and start talking about U.S. politics. I'm like, you don't even live here. Get out of here.
Yeah.
And so, but what I saw is like, as a worship leader, I'm watching people because here's a group of people who are probably a hodgepodge of people. I mean, I was like, there's no way I'm the only believer in this room right now, but everyone's singing along, everyone's dancing, everyone's got their hands up, everyone's clapping. And then even like to my left, there was an older couple. And by that, I mean, they were probably late 60s and they stood the entire time and danced and sang along the entire time. And I was
Cool.
like, man, what if church was like this? Like every
Yeah.
Sunday, if you had every single person with the common theme of we're gonna come here and be joyous. And so I was just kind of taking it in, and I was just like, man, it just blew me away because they never sat. I was tired, like my feet started hurting, but they stood up the whole time and just was like grooving to the music. I'm sure they're old hippies. It was awesome. But I was just like, yeah, and there was no political agenda there. It was just like, let's get lost in the music for 2 hours and be unified. And that's what it was, man. It was like we were there to see a band, and it didn't matter our backgrounds, didn't matter our
Yeah.
political affiliations or anything. We were there to have a good time, sing along with one of our favorite bands, and that's what it was. And I was like, that's how every show should be. I hate
Yeah. it should
going to a show that's like all of a sudden political. Because I told Courtney, I was like, I know we're going to be driving 3 hours to go see them. And I was like, one political thing, I'm out. Because I don't want to hear it. I don't care. I'm there to be entertained. And so it's different if you kind of use like, this kind of a platform, like a podcasting. Because now, I mean, I think Our Lady Peace has what they call it, Discord or something, where you pay a monthly thing. And I'm like, sure,
Oh, yeah.
if somebody's paying to hear you talk about whatever you want, because I'm not
Yeah.
going to listen. But when I'm there, when I want to see you live, I want to hear you play your songs, and that's it. I don't,
Exactly.
you know.
There's
And
a
so,
time and a place for it.
yeah, and so it kind of
If you wanted
goes for me. It kind of that's why I always struggled with us live about sharing too much or saying stuff. I know that most of our shows were at churches, so that you kind of understood, hey, I'm here to see a band that may share their testimony. But when we played in bars or clubs, I didn't really talk that much. It was more like, hey, we're just, we love Jesus. We're a rock band. If you have questions, come talk to us.
It was less pressure in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But that's a whole other
Yeah.
whole other discussion. But yeah.
But yeah, so those are my 5. I could probably go on a little bit more, but did you think of any more?
I
Because
did.
I
of
even
a
thought
couple.
about it's like country artists. I still like. I mean, I grew up listening to Garth Brooks and Vince
Yeah.
Gill and Reba and all the I would say greats of
Oh, yeah.
country. But I don't think they really influenced. It's just something I like to listen to.
Yeah, yeah. So another one for me would be Michael Jackson.
Yes.
I mean, just like how could you not be inspired by
Yeah.
Michael Jackson? I remember like this is embarrassing for me, but I'm just gonna go ahead and say it, and I don't care. But when I was little, I used to like my grandma and grandpa would buy me penny loafers. So that could act, and I had gloves, and I would dance in front of the mirror and stuff. I mean,
Please tell me you
so
have home videos of that.
my
somewhere.
mom probably does. I assume she does.
Oh, man.
Please don't ever bring them out, Mom, if you're listening to this.
Yes, please do. I want to see it.
So he definitely inspired me. Not necessarily, because I haven't done anything that sounds like that or
Yeah.
anything, but just the fact that I want to do that.
Did
in
you-
some way?
Did you watch his very last thing? Like he was preparing for that tour.
Oh, yeah,
and it was
this
kind of
is
the
it,
behind the
yeah.
scenes. Yeah,
Hmm.
man, when he's trying to get them to do a certain bass line.
Oh yeah, and they don't
It's-
play it right.
No, and he stops
Yeah.
them immediately. He's like, "No, it's this," and he can. I was like,
Yeah.
"That guy
Yeah.
is legit."
It,
I'm like, when
that
you can-
and like, can you imagine being? I mean, because first of all, he on that tour he has like the best drummer,
Yeah.
the best keyboard, the best of everybody,
Mhm.
and he has the balls. Can I say balls?
Yeah, sure.
Anyway, I said balls. So anyway, yeah, Tommy's a little rough around the edges, folks.
That's right.
So he has the balls to tell the people, "You're not playing that right."
Yeah,
Can you
exactly.
imagine that?
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine that. And then there's another scene in that movie where he's telling them, he said, "That's not how it's played on the record. Play it
Yeah.
how it is on the record." And I
Yeah.
was, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So anyway, Michael Jackson's another one. The next one is Caedmon's Call for me.
Forgot about
Because
that.
they've inspired me a lot, like in songwriting.
Mhm.
I write songs outside of what we do and everything, and anyway, just the again, not that I've written anything like that or anything, but it's just inspired me musically.
Yeah.
So that's is that 4?
That's 4. Yeah.
So I've got one more. Man.
I don't know.
Man, I don't. It's
I was
just
trying
so
to even.
hard.
I was just even trying to think what you used to listen to in the van all the time too.
I listened to a lot of Cademans
Yeah.
back then.
Yeah.
I don't listen to anything but country now, besides some rock here and
Yeah.
there. You know, man, I don't know. And I'm looking around, and I
Yeah.
don't know why I'm looking around because the only posters I have are us. So
You're influenced by us. It's fine.
I'm influenced by Daniel.
Okay.
No, that's just who I was looking at. You know, I'd be influenced by Daniel back then, maybe, but
Yeah.
so, which is a whole other story, also.
Yeah.
But man, I don't know.
It's fine. You got 4.
Yeah, I'll say
can go.
4, man. I just
Yeah.
can't think of anything else. I'm sure after tonight I'm gonna be like,
Yeah.
oh, I forgot, you know. But I got the main ones in there at least. So
You did. Yeah, that's good. I think I want to hang on and not do the song meanings because we're
yeah,
Getting
we're
pretty
getting pretty.
we
good
got
there.
sidetracked. So we'll do another one and we can do song meanings. We can do more than just Summer Fade. We kind of talk about. We can even talk about influences of why they wrote those types of songs and that kind of stuff too.
Yeah.
And I can get personal. We'll talk about because Summer Fade was a tipping point of as me as a songwriter really struggling with relationships that I was in at the time.
Which, by the way, just as a little spoiler alert, I said that like Medea.
Mm-hmm.
Alert.
Hello.
Yeah. Anyway.
Hallelujah.
Summer Fade has one of my favorite RA songs. On
Oh,
there.
really?
Yeah.
I don't know
Suddenly
what that one is.
Maybe.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's a good song.
Suddenly Maybe is my favorite. I feel like it's like a timeless song, sort of like it could come out right now on whatever is a big show because I don't even know.
Yeah.
I live in a hole. It's like whatever the big show is now, it
Yeah.
could be the song for it, and you would think it was just written today.
Yeah.
But my also favorite rocking song is on that as well, which is the title cut. Summer.
Mhm,
I just love the.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, and I ripped the drum beat off of Godspeed. Part of it. Anyway, let's save our story